Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Val Evans with Forensic Astrologer, and we are live. It is Friday night. We're excited. I've got Grace Wilson with me. Hi, Grace.
Hello, everyone.
We are ready, or at least we think we are. If you do not have a hot date tonight and you're with us, we feel honored. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to pull my microphone a little closer. And know who they were looking for yet. It was January 15th, 1978. It was Tallahassee and in Florida. And there was just a lot of, I guess we'll take you up to this point. It was a Saturday night. It was Super Bowl weekend. People were out and about. They were excited. It was almost like a holiday. They were just back from Christmas break. We've just got a lot of college kids at FSU. And it just seemed like an ordinary night. It was cold, though. It was like there was frost. People were wearing sweaters and coats. Okay, so the first slide here, I just want to describe what it was like as the police are rolling up here. It was complete and utter chaos. But no one had heard any screams. There were 30 witnesses within earshot. But when one of the, I guess, investigators happened upon the scene, they saw bark everywhere, and they had determined that the victim was hit with an oak branch. There was even, of course, the reporters, they listened to, the radio, the police radio, and so they rush over. And so there's a reporter on the scene. There's pantyhose that's left at the scene, and it was cut, and it was found later at another scene. The crime, they estimated, took place in less than 15 minutes, and it was a gruesome scene. So more context. After everything was happening, the police were on the scene. There were about 36 women in nightgowns, basically, just horrified. Everyone was talking and trying to figure out what was going on. So the police put them all at the dining room table in the house. And they were traumatized. They were sick, throwing up. Some were fainting. They were screaming and crying. And why I'm doing this is I'm trying to describe this scene so that we can see this actually in the crime chart and what we can see. So I guess just not even looking at the chart, Grace, what do you think we're going to see? Probably like females.
Well, we're going to see a lot of motion, and we're going to see a lot of emotion, which will be mirrored in the asteroids. A lot of fear.
Yeah, a lot of fear. And that's going to actually reverberate into the town where there is just fear is the word here. There is the word devil comes up, evil, and of course fear. So now one witness did see the perpetrator run out very fast out the front door, if I read that correctly. And it was a little bit after 3 a.m. She was on a date. And then a psychologist and a sketch artist were immediately requested so that the witness could, she has a fresh eye so she can describe what she's seeing or what she saw. Now, one of the witnesses that was beaten by Ted Bundy said that she believed that he, had stopped killing or stopped attacking her when somebody's headlights had shone through the window from outside, and that, I guess, that scared him off. So here are the victims: Lisa Levy, who's 20, Margaret Bowman. I think Margaret was 21, and then Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler were victims, but they were beaten. And then Cheryl Thomas was attacked shortly thereafter. Lisa was a Florida girl. I know she was born and raised in Florida. She was from St. Petersburg. Margaret, I don't know her background, but I'm sure I will add more information next week when we talk. We're going to talk about the police strength of this crime chart, the best and the brightest that they were described. There were a lot of very good policemen on the scene. There were some that were just politically motivated, but it was said that they did a good job as much as they could anyway. So what was the perp's description? Someone just first said there was a dark-skinned white man, or that the person was dark-skinned. So they had a lot of people calling in saying that they were Ted, the killer, who wasn't even the right skin color. So just crazy people. So that he had a pointy nose, he was wearing a hat, carrying a club, and that he left bite marks on the victims, one of which was on the thigh of the victim, Lisa Levy. So this is what I did. I don't know if you can see this, but I did, before we get into the main crime chart, I wanted to see what the Tallahassee chart was. And let me see if I can make this even bigger. Hold on 1 second. A little bit bigger. Okay. So Tallahassee on the inside, and then the night of the murders. And I circled immediately. I saw how Uranus is 18 in the natal chart, is conjunct in the same sign in Capricorn with Venus there. So when I see sun, sometimes I think of blonde women. I think one of them was blonde, but this was like a shock, an evil shock. And sextile Venus in the 9th house of the natal chart, which would be college girls. And then in Scorpio there. So death of college girls. And then I have, well, Moon was in Aries that night. We know that. And it is trining Neptune, which is Neptune conjunct the natal moon, is like this famous mystery. Who is it? And then Moon is conjunct Chiron. So women abused and wounded. And then you have a sextile to Saturn at 18, which is like this evil death. And I put that red arrow because it's an opposition from top to bottom, and it's like the downfall, I guess just the fall. And this is evil death. And we always talk about 18 is evil, 22 is kill or be killed. But, everybody has one of these. I think a lot of people, at least, have one of these degrees in their chart. I have them. But there are just certain times when you see 18 and that's an evil degree. And in your chart, you can see that, and it might not be you. It might be somebody that you're always encountering. It might be somebody at work. It might be a parental figure or what have you.
In my chart,
yeah,
I have Neptune at 18 Scorpio in my 8th house. So
wow. So you probably like evil mysteries.
I have been into true crime my whole entire life. Just was always fascinated with it.
Yeah, I have an 18. What's that?
I started with Edgar Allan Poe and Sherlock Holmes.
I started with Nancy Drew, not as dark, but I grew to love dark. And I've got 18 on my vertex I shouldn't be telling anybody this, but in the 8th house. So I don't know what that means, but it's conjunct Saturn in Gemini. So I don't know, talking about 8th house matters and evil 8th house matters. Let's hope that's what it is. So, and one more thing, let's see here. We've got Saturn transiting the Tallahassee chart at 29 degrees Leo, the Regulus degree, Chi Omega. That's, isn't that sororities, or that's like the royal, I don't know, would you call that representative of sororities?
Is it? I'm having a little trouble. Is it on the ninth side,
It's
ninth house side, or?
the one that's circled in red.
Oh,
29.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just
Or no.
right on. I see.
Um,
Um, I'm not sure. The traditional um, interpretation of Saturn on Regulus is
mhm.
a violent death in a tumult.
Uh-huh. Well, I guess that would make
So
sense.
yeah. So I don't know about the sorority girls, but
Yeah. And
well,
then it would,
Chi Omega. That's I don't know what that means, but
yeah,
Omega means
I think that's sorority, but I don't know. We can check into that. Okay, so we've got Uranus at 18, and then it's not only, okay, is it conjunct Venus, but it's squaring Pluto in Libra, which is a lot of beauty. Okay. And it's a sorority. Well, sorority is 11th house. And then it's also squaring Chiron and Moon. So I don't know. I think for what it says about Tallahassee that night is that there's some serious shit that's happening right now.
yeah.
And then you've got Mercury, and I'm going to say that those are the reporters, because the reporters, they reported the names of the witnesses, which they shouldn't have done. They were, according to this book anyway, they were badly behaved. Let's just say that. Okay. So
Not the media.
I know. So all right. So this is Ted Bundy's natal chart. I just did the simple chart. We're going to go to the more advanced chart of astro.com soon. But well, when you see Saturn and Pluto, that's just a lot of dead bodies. 8 degrees death. And it shows family problems too, because you've got Leo, which is family. And for him, it was a loss of family. He had a terrible family as he was growing up. And then, of course, your eye goes right to Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a killer sign. And he had quite a few planets that were retrograde. Uranus, Saturn, Pluto, Venus, Mercury, was
Yeah, he was not operating right.
he wasn't.
No.
Sometimes with Mercury retrograde, it can show that somebody talks like quirky. But in this case, because it's in Scorpio, Mercury retrograde, conjunct Venus, I think that he thinks quirky, and that's a bad word, but thinks in an offbeat way sexually towards women. I think there's that kind of combination there with Scorpio. And then the fourth house is supposed to show how your life ends. Mine is Venus in Aquarius, so I guess I'll be reading a chart when I die. But for him, what was the last kill? What was the last murder? Well, I think one of the last murders was
Kimberly.
that the young girl, but really the one that he's known for, the Chi Omegas. That was the end of the road for him, and Sagittarius means college.
Mm-hmm.
So he had another attack at a college, basically, and then also Sagittarius means the movies. So well beyond his death, he would be starring essentially in movies.
Yes.
Okay, here's another simple chart. Here are the transits for that night of January 15th, 1978. This is around 3 a.m. This is how Ted Bundy is feeling and how he's thinking. And I'll tell you what, and this is not to be sympathetic at all to Ted Bundy, but I'm just saying, for as a human, when you've got, the outer planets hitting your personal planets, you're not yourself. Would you agree?
Oh, yes.
Like Neptune, like that to me, that's fantasies. Okay. And with Mars there a little bit, Mars and Moon, he's having like abuse fantasies.
Yeah, I see that.
And trine Moon in the ninth, well, that would be like women in college. Moon in Aries is abuse. And then you've got a nice square there. He's got Saturn squared, is it Mercury? And so he's thinking about, that's what he's thinking about, because Mercury is what you're thinking about. And he might even be thinking about the past too, because what would trigger him not only were his sexual fantasies, but his feeling about his family and about how he wanted revenge. And so there's that Uranus in Scorpio, and that would be like shocking revenge. Maybe subconscious with the 12th there. But there's something there with Saturn that almost is like you're being stopped. Look at that sun. This is at the point where he's about to be stopped by the government, which is Sun. Mars is also, let's see, where's Mars? Mars is in his
Mars?
Yeah, so Mars is in his 12th for the transit. So they're his hidden enemy right now. They're going after him, but they're weak because it's retrograde. So if you were to look at this, and you'd see that some people were there behind you. Well, they get a little help from the government, maybe. And Sun is at 2 degrees, which is the best. That's like the FBI. Of course, I'd rather see Mars at 2 degrees, but that's usually the FBI. But anyway, so Mars in the 12th right now on January 15th, 1978. Those are probably police who are trying to find him, trying to get him.
Yes.
Let's see what else. And, it's never good to do things during retrograde. And at this point, it was Jupiter retrograde, Saturn retrograde, and Mars retrograde. So, as a criminal trying to get away with something, you're working against that type of energy. Let's see what else.
As an astrologer, I don't think I'd go outside.
I know. Sometimes we know too much. Yeah. Well, I think with Uranus conjunct Jupiter, okay, it shows with a squared part of fortune, it shows no success, okay? Well, it didn't really mean much on this night because he would have success, but he wouldn't be able to follow through with what he wanted to do. He wanted to kill all of them, but he couldn't. He was interrupted. What was interrupted, or what means interruption, that's Uranus. There's a big interruption. Jupiter big, Uranus interruption, square part of fortune. Couldn't go ahead and be successful with what he wanted to do that night. And then if you see, one more thing before we move on, Pluto is moving through, just came out a second, but in the past months and years, Pluto was hovering over his Neptune, his natal Neptune. And that's in Libra, which is women and beauty and fantasies about women and beauty. And then you've got that North Node right next to Pluto there. And that is, the North Node is a malefic. And it's the snake. It's the top part of the snake. It bites you. So he's being bitten with these enormous amount of fantasies, I think, here. And remember that North Node is an emphasizer. So you've got 2 emphasizer planets conjunct Neptune. You would think it'd have something to do with assets or money, or eating or something like that. If anybody has any input, please let us know. And this is the other chart if you wanted to see it that way. Look that Neptune is within 4 degrees of Mars. That's killer fantasies. And then sextile Pluto. That's pretty intense. Okay.
Pretty crazy.
So, this is the chart. This is Grace's chart. And you've got some, well, you take it away. How do you want to start with this chart?
Well, this chart is of the time that they estimated that he entered the sorority. The guess was around 2:45 a.m. So plug that in. First thing I saw was that the AC was on 25-degree Leo. Oh, wait a minute. Got that backwards. Okay, the first thing I noticed was the moon opposite Pluto. And that's just in the regular. Okay, can we go to the next one? Just the Chi-Omega murders.
By the way, can I just say, as soon as you started talking, we just got a jump in viewers.
What, we went from 1 to 2? No. Okay, so the first thing I noticed was the moon opposite Pluto, right? Moon, 5th house, sex for pleasure kind of thing. Pluto was in Libra, ruled by Venus, so it was against women. Now, with the moon is the asteroid Requiem, and that means death. So that was pretty obvious there. And then with Pluto is 2 asteroids. I forgot to write the names down. One means victimization, and the other one means the most beautiful. So Ted was looking for the cream of the crop, which was the Chi-Omega. That was the #1 sorority. It had the most beautiful girls. That's where he went.
Wow. And this, just to back up, this is the crime chart. Or wait, what chart is this?
This is the crime chart of when the police were called.
Okay. On January 15th?
Yes.
1978 at 3:25?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So Chiron, which is okay, so he's in the 5th house too.
Okay.
We have Polyxena, which is a family tragedy. We have Patroclus, which is rage from pain and anger. And we have Mnemosyne, which means he's thinking about the past, like you pointed out. He's caught up in the past. Mars is conjunct Erida, which means hate. And then, of course, we mentioned Saturn is at Regulus, which means a violent death in a tumult. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Tumultuous, in a tumult. And Cyrene, which is an independent woman. So the thing that he wanted was, or he resented, were these independent women who would often reject him. And there was, he was at the bar that was right next to the sorority, and there were speculation that he tried to ask one of the girls to dance. and they wouldn't dance with him. They were just like, everybody thought he was creepy. So,
Mhm.
you know, that might have been what was going on that night.
Wow.
Then with Uranus, we have a lot of energy. So you were talking about the shock. With Uranus is trust, jealousy, um, a missing piece that eludes. He's always trying to get that perfect murder, and you know he's never been able to. Psyche, which is intense passion. Desmona, which is victimization. Um, and then again, Neptune, more of the same, abusive, come down on, size up. So he came down on those women. He said, "You're bad, and I'm going to kill you." In his mind. Mercury is conjunct Chimera, which means delusional, and Atropos, which you can see there, which means death, and it's with Pompeia, which means to spread disaster. And another thing that I found really interesting is Venus and the Sun, they're conjunct. They are conjunct house, and he was in a house. He was in a sorority house. Uh, and Boracity, which is deception, and Onion, which is vengeful, Endymion, which is coma. You know, he went in there and he wanted to make them where, and that's been his MO, is he knocks them on the head so that they're unconscious. And Amphitrite, which means fate. So this was a fated event. Uh, he was out of control. There's just such a sense of delusion, and he was pent up because he had been in jail. I think, what was it? Maybe going on 3 years, and he'd escaped twice and got caught both times, and he just had a lot of pent up rage. So if we look at his natal chart, which should be the next chart, we can see that his AC is on at 25 Leo, which is a violent degree, and he has Chiron adjunct Arete, which means rage. He has Jupiter conjunct Antigone, which means family scandals. He has Sun conjunct Chimera, uh, which means delusion. So he was deluded just in his self. Uh, his Mars is next to and this is kind of funny, his Mars is next to an asteroid called Paracetus, like parasite, and it just means really nasty, someone who's just really nasty. But he has, next to Pluto, he has two interesting asteroids. Eon, which means to make someone your girlfriend, and I don't mean woo her, I mean like by force, like, you know, by hook or by crook. And Astaroth, which means domestic violence. So he had a lot of delusion and rage within his own family, or his own chart, his own personal chart. And his family, um, it's really interesting. He was born, so his mother got pregnant, unwed. And the family were so embarrassed that they sent her away to Vermont, and then she had Ted. But uh, they allowed her to bring Ted home, but they had to say that he was their son. So he grew up thinking that grandpa was daddy, like in his formative years, 0 to 5. And then, the rug was pulled out from under him, which you can see 5 years old, his AC would have been at 29 um, Leo, which Leo's sun, 29, the end of the sun. He was 5 years old. His mother took him away, took him all the way um, to
Wow,
Washington.
that's
But
amazing.
but the thing is she had to go away before she could claim him as hers because of the family scandal.
That's right. That's right.
So and he didn't even find that out until he was 11. He thought, oh well, I lived with my grandparents and Johnny Bundy, and this is my mom. But no, that's not what happened.
So this Neptune is trining Moon. That's like a mother scandal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just because you have a trine, that doesn't mean something that's positive. Because
No,
Neptune is a malefic.
yes it
And
is.
that, yeah. And then with Mars, like Mars and Moon is abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Ted is right in the
Yeah,
middle of Moon.
verbal abuse.
Yep, verbal abuse. Ted is right in the middle of Black Moon Lilith and the Moon, which is kind of like would you say it was like a sinister motherly type of relationship or home?
No, I think Ted loved his mother,
Okay.
and I think that he couldn't deal with the fact that his mother lied to him.
Mm,
And he found out, I think, like at 11 or 12, so it's a very confusing age for him. So I think he displaced his anger from his mother onto women as a whole. And
okay.
then when he got dumped when he was in college,
Uh-huh.
that's what triggered,
And
I'm
then
going
so
after
so
college
Black
girls.
Moon Lilith conjunct Theodore, that
Hmm.
basically shows that he's the one that's sinister.
Hmm.
And then well, and then you've got Ted here too.
Hmm.
But how interesting is it that I mentioned before when you have that opposition that goes straight down, it's your downfall. What's the downfall? Killing lots of women.
Hmm.
Scorpio, Venus, Jupiter,
Hmm.
lots of women killed. And that's from his MC and Prey too.
Yeah, at the ninth degree, which is a body in the ditch degree.
Here we go. Right. So we've got the ascendant at 26 degrees. Now, I say we start with the victims here. Every time I
Okay.
see a Scorpio ascendant, I think of Bob Saget, which bothers me. That crime bothers me
Hmm.
because, um, but what were the victims doing on this night? They were sleeping, weren't they?
Hmm.
Why is the ascendant in Scorpio? I do not know. But in the descendant was at 26 degrees, so the perpetrator is doing something that is evil. And this doesn't have all of the aspects to it, but it's simple enough we can talk about it. So what we do is we go and we look at the ascendant, and so now we're going to look at Mars, which is in the ninth house. So the victim is in college, the ninth house, and retrograde. So they're not strong on this night.
Hmm. They
And
were
then we've
vulnerable.
got with that
They were vulnerable.
vulnerable, vulnerable. I would like to see something like they were sleeping, but um,
Let me see.
maybe maybe they're like woken up. Like this is like woken up, interrupted in sleep. Yeah,
Yeah,
Uranus.
we'll have to see where more somnus is
Okay. Uh,
because
oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, because that means sleep or coma.
Yeah. So now we've got, and what we're going to do next week is we're going to add the minor transits or I'm sorry, minor aspects. and then we'll probably see more information. But this is like at a glance, like what happened. Okay, well, it's the fifth house. It's like people in the city, everybody's partying. It's a holiday. It's a Super Bowl Sunday weekend, and women are out. But what we do is we look at Venus, we look at the sun, because sun is a co-ruler of the perpetrator. So what does that say immediately? And he's in the second house too, right? So he might have a dark complexion, which is how they described him. And what's dark complexion? That's Capricorn. Okay. 24 degrees. I don't know if he was in disguise that night, but that's the Pisces degree. He's having fantasies about death, Saturn death. And he is right next to a female. Second house is like eating, cannibalism, okay? And 23 degrees is the Uranus degree, so in complete shock. And the other thing is that when you see Venus next to Sun, it can show that people generally consider this person like a good-looking person.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. He's square moon, so whenever you have that contact with moon, especially with a square, it's like they're famous, but not in a good way. And
Right.
then you have the square to the 11th house, which is like, it's a beautiful sorority. So that's what I would look at. I would look at Sun and Venus. Both give descriptions of the perpetrator. Still kind of, with these major aspects, still kind of vague here. They, like, you would want to look at this crime chart and say, look for bite marks on the victim. Okay. And so bite marks would be teeth. You'd look for something that would represent teeth.
Saturn.
Like Saturn, okay. And then you might look at Chiron, like marks or scars or tattoos would be there at the Mars degree. So it's like an attack,
Mm-hmm.
a bite, and the mouth area, that's still Taurus. So, but it's still a little bit vague there. Then what else do we have? We've got witnesses. So that's the other thing you would look for. You would be like, okay, what kind of witnesses do we have? And that, to me, would be Mercury. Okay. And we had two witnesses. We had one that saw him as he ran by, and the other one was right by the female. You could say this is a victim because it's a female, but it would be Mars. Here's the victim. She's right here. So you'd want to see something that has something to do with someone nearby who heard. And Mercury is to see and to hear. That's why we assign Mercury as a witness. So, but with the trine, okay, she may not have, here's what happened. She didn't see the victim. She saw the killer, okay? And we've assigned this, but she saw something. This would be death, as you said. She saw something about the death. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What's that? Well, Regulus, Saturn on Regulus means death. So anyway, she
It's
heard.
violent death.
Yeah, it's a violent death.
Yeah. With lots of, which she did. I mean, he ran from room to room. And he caused a great deal of scene. Nobody heard him, but he did it.
Mm-hmm. So I would say Uranus at 15 degrees, that's a bad degree. That's shocking death while someone's sleeping. That's one thing that you could take from this. But what's really interesting too is like the fourth house shows the end of the matter.
Hmm.
So I guess you would, because you don't have anything in that house, you're going to look to Jupiter. And Jupiter is in the eighth house. I guess that's the death penalty. I don't know. But
It sure was.
yeah, we've got a group there, death group. Two people that died. That's really what the end of the matter was here. We've got two victims in the eighth house. And then we've got that part of fortune. What do you make of the part of fortune on the MC?
He managed to make it a big public scene.
Yeah.
Like you said, it just went everywhere. It was, the whole nation was rocked because we just didn't have things like this happen back in those days. So he was successful at that, is how I would read that, because that just means an area of your life you're successful in. So he did
Now
that.
we can see that Mars, if we were to look at Mars for the police, that would be that they're weak, although they seemed like they were pretty capable. They're going to be in the news a lot, though, so which they didn't like. They did not. They didn't like how the witnesses' names were published. So they had some problems there with the press. And let's talk about timing here.
Okay.
So we've got the Sun, and we've got Venus in the second house. Okay. Right then and there with that T-square shows he's going to be stopped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's at the end of Capricorn. So would that determine that he is about at the end of his killing spree?
Yes. It's in a succeeding house, so it's not, right away, but could be a couple of weeks away, which it was. I think it was 2.5 weeks, something like that. Maybe about a week after he had killed Kimberly that he got caught.
So when we see like the co-rulers at the end of a sign, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. When I see Sun square Pluto, sometimes that can show like a big fire, or like I don't know, but that it's like it's a big bonfire or a fire of some sort. And Capricorn is in the woods too. I'm not sure. I know that he had a rental, but there's something about woods too. So I don't have to look into that, but not here. Nobody was burning anything here.
No.
We've got Neptune, which is mystery, trine the moon again, so famous mystery, and then sextiling. The emphasizer plus Pluto is a famous death mystery. So anyway, and just to finalize, and then we'll just make a date for the next time. But we've got Saturn here at the MC. So the entire city, even the state, was in fear. And that really captured what what the environment was like. Everybody, and when you read this book, you just get that sense. Even the police can't sleep. They bring their guns out. They put it on the dining room table. They tell their wives not to go to church. And by the way, one thing that the sorority girls did that night, they were asked to give fingerprints. They called their families, tell them they were okay, and they all got together and they went to church on the campus, I think. And that was, I think, very smart of them to do, because they felt that evil. That is an evil energy that went through their home. And so I think that was smart. And even when you're looking at these charts, sometimes I'll get a shower, clean that off, because this is energy. But what do you think about it? Like, does that ever cross your mind that you need to cleanse after you look at a chart?
Well, to me, it's not so much just the cleansing, but just the cutting of any cords, any attachments that I might have to that chart or that case, because that's the problem, is the attachment that you get to the cases. And a protection spell is always the best thing to do before you start to, look at a chart, because that's going to protect your mind from the horror that you're seeing.
Exactly.
That's my routine.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to the fear just real quick, see, not only were they afraid because he did this on campus to these poor girls, but then he left the campus and went out into the neighborhood, just a couple blocks away, and attacked a single woman. So they were like, we're not safe anywhere. We're not safe in our home. We're not safe if we send our kids to school. And they panicked.
Yep. And Saturn rules the third house, looks like, of neighborhood. Here in the neighborhood. I usually like to look at South Node, because it's what was left behind. And with Moon, I don't know, what would Moon be?
Well, he left women behind. This is the first time he ever left the women behind.
That's right. Oh my God.
He usually took them with him.
Yes. And then also trine Neptune. Well, Sagittarius is your leg, and I'm thinking this is pantyhose. He left behind pantyhose.
Yes.
Let's see. He left behind bite marks.
Yes, he did.
Might be here.
Which is part of what.
And then
clinched the deal.
And then blood. Now, Moon represents, it's a co-ruler of the victim, so he left the victim's blood behind too. So, and it was too much with that opposition to Pluto.
Yes, overkill.
Yeah, it was too much. And then there was that whole cannibalism theme, which the second house would represent. So anyway. All right. Well, I think we took a look at that pretty well. If you like this channel and you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And we would love if you give us a like too. And we are going to look at more charts, and we'll be back next week. I think I'd like to look at this again, but we'll look at a couple of other Ted Bundy charts. And I'll give an update on this book.
Yes. I'm excited to hear the end.
Yeah, The Secret Psychic Files. Pretty good, guys. Okay. And talks about the one of the police officers who did a really great job, Officer George Brand. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time. If you want more information on degrees. Oh, and we've got a little message here. He left behind a log.
Yes, he did.
So think about that one. Well, that second house might be log. I don't know. It's a weapon. You left a weapon behind. So something to keep in mind there. Okay. So go to forensicastrologer.com. On my homepage, if you are interested in the degrees, you can see my degree page. You can also go to Instagram if you want hundreds of charts that I've done. Go to @forensicastrologer. And thank you so much, Grace. We will see you next time.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.